Okay. So, I mean, oral language is the development, the precursor to reading and writing. And it's all about communication. So when kids want to communicate and want to learn, they want to learn to read. They want to learn to write. And I think a huge factor in this is being read to, because that's what opens up all these multiple worlds to kids. That book language is very different from conversation language. And it's really through stories and books that we reach other worlds, we reach other ideas, and where we can make connections between ourselves and what's happening in a book. So I think, Frank Smith said there are 100 different ways to teach kids how to read. And kids have learned to read through lots of different methodologies. And I think that's true. Although, I guess what I think is the most important factor is the metacognition. I really believe that kids have to be taught and exposed to the multiple strategies that work for learning how to read, and that there isn't one route. There are multiple strategies that kids need to know, and some of them play into their strengths and some of them play into areas that are more challenging. And I believe that those are the kinds of meetings about reading that you have with kids. What do readers do when they get stuck? And that chart gets more and more sophisticated the older that kids get. So, I am from a different era. I'm not from the guided reading era. I'm from the individualized conference era. I'm from using the big books as an instructional tool where you mask, where you really talk to kids about how they're figuring out the words, from the Don Holloway school of thinking. So that's where I come from in my thinking. I believe you have to teach kids the skills. They have to understand about sounds and phonemic awareness. And I'm someone who really believes in those cueing systems and really believes that they intersect. And kids need to use all of those cueing systems in order to find their way in reading. But I also believe that kids need to have the opportunity to share books with each other, to read to each other, to talk about books with each other, and that the adult does not have to control everything. And I think the older kids get, I think choice is really critical as kids get older, and kids can choose what they want to read, and they can talk about what they want to read without an adult being present. Sometimes the adult needs to be present, sometimes the adult doesn't. But the last thing I want to happen is that kids think that reading comprehension and reading is about answering the teacher's questions. And Catherine Patterson, has this wonderful quote, which I'm going to paraphrase. A child came up to her and said, "What do you want me to gain from reading Bridge to Terabithia?" And she said, "The role of a writer is to write the very best book they can write. And the job of the reader is to bring to it whatever they have to make sense of that book." It's an interaction between the writer and the reader. And that's how I want kids to think about reading and think about books. And that they have as much to bring to it as whatever that word is. And, I think that we sequence things in crazy ways. Comprehension to me comes first. Comprehension started when you sat in your mother or father's lap and you were read to. And kids who are read to, you all know, if you skip a page, they yell at you, you've skipped a page. If they point to things, they know things, they're interacting with the story all the time. And that's all about comprehension. And we can't do a reading course here, but there are a million things you want kids to know about reading. And I think that having a really good writing program is just a critical part of any curriculum, because you want kids to know that writers write about what they know about and care about, and that they have ideas. And then we have masses of research now of effective practices for writing programs. And I don't know if we'll ever finish the fight about invented spelling or temporary spelling or whatever. But If you allow a child to do that, it frees their mind. It frees them to really create, and it tells you a ton of what they know and don't know, and informs assessment for you and what you have to teach. So it's just all a part of what you expect to see in a certain kind of classroom that isn't dominated by test prep, because all of this stuff takes a lot of time. And not only does it take a lot of time, it takes an enormous level of skill on the part of a teacher. It is not an easy teaching job to be able to do all these things and orchestrate these things and have the knowledge base to make decisions and to determine what you want to have happening in your classroom.